Hey friends, welcome back. Get ready to test your knowledge on one of the most iconic decades in history. From disco and classic rock to groundbreaking events. How well do you remember the era? Let's find out. What movie won the Academy Award for Best Picture in 1972? The Godfather, Cabaret, or A Clockwork Orange? The Godfather. Which band released the album Rumors in 1977? Led Zeppelin, the Eagles, or Fleetwood Mac? Fleetwood Mac. Who was the U.S. president when the Watergate scandal broke? Gerald Ford, Richard Nixon, or Jimmy Carter? Richard Nixon. Which 1970s TV show featured the Fonz? Happy Days, The Brady Bunch, or MASH? Happy Days. What was the name of the first space station launched by the U.S. in 1973? Apollo, Mir, or Skylab? Skylab. Which song by Don McLean was released in 1971 and became an anthem of the decade? American Pie, Vincent, or Bye Bye Miss American Pie? American Pie. Which country hosted the 1976 Summer Olympics? Japan, Canada, or West Germany?
Canada.
Who starred as Travis Bickle in the 1976 film Taxi Driver? Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, or Dustin Hoffman? Robert De Niro. Which game show first aired in the 1970s and is still popular today? Wheel of Fortune, Jeopardy, or The Price is Right? The Price is Right. What year did the Vietnam War officially end? 1975, 1972, or 1970? (1975). Which popular 1970s toy featured a colorful cube that players twisted and turned to solve? Simon, Rubik's Cube, or Atari? Rubik's Cube. Who sang Stayin' Alive, a disco anthem of the 1970s? The Bee Gees, ABBA, or the Jackson 5? The Bee Gees. What was the name of the infamous serial killer who terrorized California in the 1970s? Son of Sam, Ted Bundy, or Joseph James DeAngelo Jr.? Joseph James DeAngelo Jr. Which 1970s sitcom was set in a Milwaukee diner? Laverne and Shirley, All in the Family, or Happy Days? Happy Days. What was the highest-grossing film of the 1970s? Star Wars, Jaws, or The Godfather? Star Wars. Which dance craze became popular in the 1970s thanks to John Travolta? Swing, breakdancing, or the hustle? The hustle. What year did the United States celebrate its bicentennial? 1976, 1975, or 1974? 1976. Who won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1979? Henry Kissinger, Mother Teresa, or Jimmy Carter? Mother Teresa. Which 1970s song contains the lyrics "Ground Control" to Major Tom? Rocket Man, Space Oddity, or Major Tom? Space Oddity. What was the title of the first Star Wars movie released in 1977? A New Hope, The Empire Strikes Back, or Return of the Jedi? A New Hope. Which actor played Superman in the 1978 movie? Gene Hackman, Marlon Brando, or Christopher Reeve? Christopher Reeve. Which world-famous theme park opened in Florida in 1971? Walt Disney World, Universal Studios, or SeaWorld? Walt Disney World. Who was the British Prime Minister for most of the 1970s? Edward Heath, Margaret Thatcher, or Harold Wilson? Harold Wilson. Which album by Pink Floyd was released in 1973 and became one of the best-selling albums of all time? Wish You Were Here, The Dark Side of the Moon, or Animals? The Dark Side of the Moon. What year was the first Earth Day celebrated? 1975, 1970, or 1979? 1970. Who directed the 1975 horror film Jaws? Alfred Hitchcock, George Lucas, or Steven Spielberg? Steven Spielberg. What was the name of the music festival held in upstate New York in 1969, which set the stage for 1970s rock culture? Altamont, Woodstock, or Monterey Pop? Woodstock. Which 1970s political scandal led to the resignation of a U.S. president? Iran-Contra, Watergate, or Teapot Dome? Watergate. What was the name of the first African-American woman elected to the U.S. Congress who served during the 1970s? Angela Davis, Barbara Jordan, or Shirley Chisholm? Shirley Chisholm. Which 1970s hit song was performed by Queen and became an anthem? Bohemian Rhapsody, We Will Rock You, or Another One Bites the Dust? Bohemian Rhapsody. What iconic TV miniseries about slavery aired in 1977? Roots, The Thorn Birds, or North and South? Roots. Which popular 1970s movie featured the character Rocky Balboa? Raging Bull, Rocky, or The Champ? Rocky. What was the name of the famous boxing match between Muhammad Ali and George Foreman in 1974? The Fight of the Century, The Thrilla in Manila, or The Rumble in the Jungle? The Rumble in the Jungle. Which 1970s rock band is known for their hit Stairway to Heaven? Led Zeppelin, The Rolling Stones, or The Who? Led Zeppelin. What year did the U.S. Supreme Court decide Roe v. Wade, legalizing abortion nationwide? 1975, 1973, or 1978? 1973. Which actress won the Academy Award for Best Actress 1977 for Annie Hall? Faye Dunaway, Meryl Streep, or Diane Keaton? Diane Keaton. What year did the Kent State shootings occur during anti-Vietnam War protests? 1973, 1971, or 1970? 1970. Which 1970s novel by Stephen King was his first published work? The Shining, Carrie, or Salem's Lot? Carrie. Who was the U.S. president at the end of the 1970s? Jimmy Carter, Gerald Ford, or Richard Nixon? Jimmy Carter. Which TV show, featuring Archie Bunker, was one of the most popular sitcoms of the 1970s? All in the Family, MASH, or The Mary Tyler Moore Show? All in the Family. Which iconic band broke up in 1970, marking the end of an era? The Rolling Stones, The Beatles, or The Who? The Beatles. Which 1970s horror film features a possessed girl named Reagan? The Exorcist, Rosemary's Baby, or Halloween? The Exorcist. What was the name of the U.S. space mission that successfully landed on the moon in 1971? Apollo 11, Apollo 14, or Apollo 15? Apollo 14. Which 1970s animated TV show featured a superhero dog named Scooby-Doo? Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? Underdog, or Mighty Mouse? Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? Which U.S. city hosted the 1970 Sixth Democratic National Convention? Miami, New York City, or Chicago? New York City. What year did Elvis Presley die? 1977, 1976, or 1978? 1977. Who was the first female U.S. Supreme Court Justice, appointed in 1979? Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Sandra Day O'Connor, or Elena Kagan? Sandra Day O'Connor. Which album by the Eagles, released in 1976, became one of the best-selling albums of all time? Desperado, Hotel California, or One of These Nights? Hotel California. Who played the title role in the 1978 film Grease? John Travolta, Richard Gere, or Tom Cruise? John Travolta. Which technology company was founded by Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, and Ronald Wayne in 1976? IBM, Microsoft, or Apple? Apple. Thanks for taking our trip back to the 1970s. How many questions did you get right? Let us know in the comments and share your favorite memories or facts from the decade. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you in the next quiz.